Good morning, everyone. Happy last day of May. My hair has a mind of its own today. Apologize there. We will let everybody get situated here and then we'll get started. Today we'll be talking about mindset. So really understanding how to take all that confidence that you have and put it into action. Because just being confident really isn't enough. All right. I'm going to share to my different pages so that everybody can keep up to date. All right. I hope everybody had a pretty good week. It was an interesting one in the Kirk household. We celebrated our third wedding anniversary on Thursday, so it was a good week for us. All right. We have a couple people watching. So this week's going to be a little bit different than the past couple weeks. So there's not going to be a PowerPoint, but there are going to be some live videos. It's going to be a little bit more adult. So if you have children that you watch this with, I don't know if you would. I know I did one that was all about teaching kids situational awareness, but this is more of an adult-friendly type of conversation because we're going to be talking about violence. So some of us have never really encountered violence. So just give me 1 second here. Hey, Ernie, can you turn that down? It's weird. I can hear myself talking from another room. It's everything that I've said already. Woo! Yes, not enough coffee yet for Krav and coffee. Where was I? An important part of building that mindset of taking that confidence and translating it into action is being able to overcome the oh shit moment when violence happens. And that's not something that just you wake up with one day. You have to train it. So we have in the past 6 weeks talked about ways in which to build your mental game when it comes to self-protection. And this week is going to be no different. We're still building our mental game, but we also are starting to kind of dive into why training is important, why it's not all just mental. There's more than just good morning, Heather. There's more than just, thank you, the thought process. The thought process has to translate into action. So when you think about your survival mindset, you want to think about being prepared, right? You're visualizing what's going on and what you're going to do about it. And it's taking all the confidence that you've built and putting it into action. What are you going to do with all that confidence and all that awareness? And at this stage in the game, we've all kind of understood that awareness is key. That's something I like to reiterate with each conversation, is that the more aware you are of your surroundings, the greater chance you have of being able to respond to the problem instead of react. If we're always reacting, then we're acting on emotion and fear, and it might not be the best type of response. It's always better to have that level of control that allows you to respond to something, helps you to articulate why you did it, and it helps you to learn and to grow from it. So with that being said, violent attacks happen. not as often as a domestic violence situation would happen for women, but they happen, and there's YouTube videos that prove it. And should a violent attack occur, you will have already needed to develop that survival mindset. It's not, like I said, it's not a knee-jerk reaction. For many of us, it's something that we need to actually sit down and prepare. And that the idea of survival isn't like, well, I'm going to destroy whoever attacks me. It's I'm going home, right? And whatever that means to you. And that's what kind of opens up self-protection to everyone, because everyone should have the right to be able to go home. So what can you do in the instance of a violent attack in order to get home? And that's where things vary, right? What technique you want to use, what tactic you want to use, if you carry a weapon, if you don't, the background that you have, if you have a child with you, if you have a family member with you, the it depends variations are infinite. So the only thing that you can kind of count on is your response, your mindset, and how you can develop that. So why is this important for women? Why do I need to even have this conversation? Because things could go wrong, especially if you haven't trained. So what could go wrong? Fear, and not what you think. Fear. Violence is scary, but the fear that many women possess is this fear of being perfect, needing to be perfect. And we get concerned about judging people. We get concerned that our actions will be irrational or out of proportion, because that's a lot of the narrative that women have been fed throughout their life. It's not an excuse, but it's reality. Girls are talked to differently than boys. Girls have different expectations going through their life than boys. We're different. Women are not just small men, right? There is a difference there. So there's this great TED Talk that talks about teaching girls bravery versus teaching them perfection. And the woman speaks about how in her area of expertise, which is coding, many of the girls, when they couldn't figure out the code, they thought there was something wrong with them. And the boys would be like, there's something wrong with the code. So it's this thought process, this narrative that kind of weaves its way through the female demographic. That's something you just can't ignore it when you teach women self-defense or you teach women to defend themselves, because it's there, and ignoring it isn't going to make it go away. Let's talk about it instead. Let's identify that you may feel this way. How can you fight against it? We'll get to that in a second. Another thing that could go wrong is shame. So, it goes in line with perfection. What did I do to put myself in this situation? Did I wear the wrong outfit? Did I go to the wrong party? Did I send the wrong signals? Did I put myself into this situation and now this is the consequence? Pretty messed up, right? So it's another part of the narrative is getting rid of that perfection bullshit and diving into the fact that if you've decided that this is something you want to do and then you get new information, you can change your mind. It's really okay. Like, go with it. So that's part of that narrative, is that shame. I put myself here and now, I have to deal with the consequences. No. The freeze, right? That is universal. So you have fight, flight, or freeze. And that freeze moment is when, evolutionary, or back when we were, in the beginning, we were being attacked by wildlife, big bears. If we could freeze, then maybe the big bear would be like, oh, there's nothing there, I'm going to walk away. Now our threat has turned into other humans. And just freezing isn't going to make them walk away. Like, we're not going to just disappear into the background. So what happens in that freeze is that you kind of get stuck in this pattern of, oh my God. And, we talked before about disrupting your attacker's OODA loop. Your OODA loop can be distracted as well. So if you are just stuck in observe and you never can translate that observation into orienting yourself to it, then that freeze can become very dangerous. And the bad guys are banking on it. So the level of stress that you are under when violence is included in the scenario is something that many of us have never felt. And that can lead to a freeze. And I get that question a lot when I teach self-defense seminars. What do I do when I freeze? And it's like, well, being here is a good start. Talking it through and planning, preparing, and actually educating yourself on how to defend yourself is a really good way to get that glitch in the system to override. And you can get out of this, I'm just going to sit here and freeze. Then we have denial. This isn't really happening. This isn't real. This doesn't happen in my part of the country. This doesn't happen in my neighborhood. They're not really going to hurt me. People are good. So denial's tough. Denial then leads to hesitation. And hesitation is, when you have a split second to do something before you're really behind the 8 ball. Denial's really not great for you. And then we have what my husband calls the pucker effect. The like, oh my God, it's a mixture of freeze and denial. And it's just like, I can't believe I'm getting really attacked right now. Did they really just pull a gun on me? Did this guy really just corner me? And it's just like, whoa, your whole body just kind of contracts and things pucker. and it's, again, that kind of goes into that denial. So what are you going to do about that? How, as a person who wants to learn how to defend themselves, an instructor who's trying to teach people to defend themselves, what do you do when you've understood that there's all these underlying emotions that are roadblocks in developing that survival mindset? And it's, survival mindset isn't a hashtag. It's not a way of living. It's a process. It's a muscle that you need to train. One of the really good things to think about is that you have a right to fight. A normal person, a decent human being, wouldn't put you into a situation where you feel vulnerable, or they wouldn't approach you at a place where you're vulnerable. They wouldn't ignore your no. And what I mean by that is sometimes people will test that no. Like, do you want to, let me go get you a drink? No, I'm good, thank you. Oh, come on, you look thirsty. No, I'm good. I'm not thirsty, I'm fine. I went to the bar and I got myself a drink and I figured I'd get you one anyway. So here you go. And you're like, thanks. So you said no multiple times and they still kind of did what they wanted to do. Right? That's not right. There's something wrong here. So identifying and being okay with being nervous about that is an okay thing. And it's not like, all right, somebody ignored your no, go punch them in the face. That might be a little drastic, but just being like, all right, you don't hear me when I say no. You disobeyed my rules. You have tested my boundaries that I've set for myself. And now it's my turn to say, I set this boundary. I said no. You're not listening to it. I'm going to remove myself from the situation. That's still survival mindset. Okay. Survival mindset doesn't always have to be using violence. It can, and it should be, it would be better if you could just walk away from it. So you always want to remember escape is kind of the number one idea, if you can. There are times when you can't. So what are you going to do about that? So you want to train it, and we've kind of been leading up to this. So if you've been watching my talks, it's been 6 weeks now. This is our 6th week. And each time we've kind of talked about ways that you can practice that mental game. And the first week was identifying your baseline. So being aware of what's going on around you. Last week, we talked about actually selecting victims, which is maybe uncomfortable, but it's not that you want to be a predator. It's that you want to understand kind of how those predators think so that you can be less likely to be prey. So you've observed your situation. You have identified places within your surroundings in your life where things could go bad. And then you've been able to select people that would be an easier target to do those bad things to. Now, the next step of that is what kind of violence can take place? So the scenario that I use very often is that, if you wait for the train to go into work, is there an area of that train station that's maybe a little bit more isolated? Maybe there's a little bit of overgrowth from the surrounding trees. It's a little dark. People wouldn't go there unless they needed to. All right. So that's an environment of opportunity. Now, is there someone who is kind of hanging out near that place? Are they distracted? Are they looking down into their phone and not looking around them? Do they have like 6 bags? Are they not presenting themselves as someone who would be able to defend against an attack? Okay, now you have your victim and you have your spot of opportunity. What kind of violence do you think could happen? And there's videos out there of people just being hit from behind and then drug off. And it's, that secondary location again that we've talked about. Once you've taken someone from a primary location where there's chance of help or identification and taking them to a place where there's isolation and the process predator then has plenty of time to do what they need to do, your survival starts to decrease. So you had better, if all those safety valves have been forgotten about and now you're fighting for your life, you had better have that survival mindset. There was a woman in Seattle who was running. She was training, I believe, for a triathlon. I'd have to double check on it. And she went to use the bathroom on the trail. There was no one in the bathroom. There was barely anybody on the trail. But actually, there was someone in the bathroom. There was a process predator. There was someone waiting in the women's bathroom for his victim. And she had just taken a self-defense class, and whoever taught must have done a really great job discussing survival mindset, because and again, this is why this is an adult-friendly talk. She said, "Not today, motherfucker." And she fought back. And she didn't walk away unscathed. I mean, she black eye, cuts, bruises, but she was able to fight off that attacker because her mindset was, "Not today, motherfucker." She locked him actually in the bathroom stall and waited for the police to come. So even if you find yourself in that isolated place with someone who has the means and the time to hurt you. It's not over. It's not over until you win. Keep that mindset in mind. And so with that, you're starting to kind of tick off all those things that could go wrong. Fear. Well, I wasn't perfect. I put myself into a situation, but really, did you? You didn't put yourself into a situation. Use the bathroom. Someone just capitalized on the fact that that bathroom was isolated. So bye-bye fear, bye-bye shame, bye-bye the need to be perfect, goodbye freeze, goodbye denial, and then mindset, that confidence was put into action. And she did something about it. Luckily, she was able to defend herself. So what kind of scenarios can you go through in your own mind? And it's tough. When you're not someone who uses violence as your career, being able to kind of think through what kind of violent attack you could do or could be done to you is scary. And it's not, that's not how I want to spend my Sunday. So you don't have to start with that huge, that big umbrella of violence. You can start a little bit more easily. Meet yourself where you are. Meet if you're an instructor, meet your students where they are. Don't expect them to jump to this level of understanding because you understand it. You really need to realize that many people have never encountered violence. They just haven't seen it except in movies. And how realistic is the movies? I love John Wick, but really? You have to allow your students, you have to allow yourself to begin where you are and build from there. But the building is necessary. So I don't want to sugarcoat this too much. You need to see violence in order to build that survival mindset muscle in self-defense. If your first experience with violence is a violent encounter and you haven't practiced survival, your odds are pretty low. Okay, so this is where your training comes in. And this is where, Krav Maga instructors, women self-defense instructors, you can't just expect everyone who has walked in your door to be survival mindset ready. But you do have a job and a ethical responsibility if you're teaching people how to defend themselves, to be realistic with them and say, you need to train this muscle. You have to prepare. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be so scary. It can be like when we talked about situational awareness for the kids, make it a game, make it fun, translate it into a language they understand. If you're working with a group of moms who know what it's like to have to prepare dinner every night, it's like, okay, go to the supermarket without a list. How do you feel? Overwhelmed, anxiety, especially now. Or go to the supermarket with a list of everything prepped. And let's take this one step further. Know the layout of your supermarket. So you can go in, get your produce, get your meat, get your bread, get your snacks, and get to the register. Preparing yourself for what you're going to do always makes it easier. So translate that survival mindset, translate all the scariness of that violence into everyday activities where people prepare. We do fire drills, right? How scary is that? But it's not scary anymore because it's been used, and it's been talked about, and it's part of the education process. And you start your kids with fire drills, and you have your fire extinguishers, and you know where they are, and you know when they've been tested. And it's, yeah, a fire is something that you don't want to be a part of, but you're not going to be like, well, the house is on fire, nothing I can do about it. No, you're going to do something about it. So when you're in classes and you're training, particularly in Krav classes, and Krav classes that we teach, we always include stress drills. So the stress drill is the fun way to see what happens. So I'll give you an example. We'll teach a women's self-defense seminar, hour and a half, go through combatives, figuring out, what it means to actually hit something, to hit another human being, feel a hit, and all through pads. We'll go over a couple techniques. And then at the end, at one class, and we've done this a couple times. So we have a circle in the middle, who divide our women in half. We have a circle in the middle, and everyone in the middle, they're shoulder to shoulder with their pads facing out. And then we have a circle around, and they're all striking, whatever strikes they want. Usually it's palm strikes. And then the instructor will call out, go, and they start striking. And then simple directions, left and right. You would be amazed how quickly people mess up left and right because it's stressful. You're striking this pad, you're doing a new skill that you've never done before. You're watching the impact from your body affect someone else's body. You're kind of tight, there's a crowd around you, and you have to think about everything you need to do to strike, and then which is your left and your right. And you wouldn't think it would be that difficult, but it does. It's just enough stress to make you, switch from that I need to fight to my thought process. It's like, wait, where am I? So remember that, instructors, if you can make it fun and take the violence out of it if you need to, then the women or your students, whether it's men or women, children, they'll start to see how they react under simple stressors. And then you can just go and build from there. And then once you find that your students are able to handle a little bit more, then you can start building that stress. You can start building that aggression. So any questions so far? Just going to say hi. Let's see. Desi, Gil, Heather, John, Don, Pete, Will, Athena, Brian, Yola, Yi, Alex. Hey, how are you? Patrick, Kevin, and Kim. If anybody else is here who wants to say hey, I'd like to say hi. But now what we're going to do is a little bit of violent encounter inoculation. So we're going to look at some videos of what violence looks like. And it's not pretty. And the idea, the plan in your head. Oh, hey, Erica, how are you? The idea in your head of what you think you're going to do and what actually happens sometimes can be very different. So we're going to start, and you guys can, the first videos we're going to go through, you can actually find on our KMU online website. You can get it through, if you go to kravuniversal.com, there's a link, you can go right into the online learning, and this is free. So if you're looking for teaching tools or trying to understand what violence looks like to improve your knowledge, you can go on to the Krav Universal site and find some. So the first one we're going to look at is just like a cheap shot. Let me see here. All right. So I'm going to get rid of me. So we talk a lot about generating power in order to make a strike create injury. So the more injury you have, the more injury you create, the more time you have to get away. So we talk a lot about what happens if you miss, or what if that strike isn't strong enough. Oftentimes we forget to say, what happens when that strike makes a really good contact and you don't get a chance to fight back. Okay. So violence isn't fair. And you can see before that gentleman or that guy, I don't know if I'd call him a gentleman, before he strikes, he steps back, he looks around, he's got his hood down, possibly because he knew there was a camera, wound up and hit. And the other guy, hands were down. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. I couldn't say if he knew, if he could see it coming. But yeah, that's violence. That's someone whose intent is to hurt you. They have no, it's almost like there's no problem with them trying to hurt you, because they have violence as their means of currency in this transaction. And they're going to use it while you hesitate and wonder whether or not you should. Okay. Let's see. So here's another one that just blows me away. Let's get it started. Sorry, guys. I don't think we need volume. Let me turn that down. All right. All right. So the thing that amazes me with that one is that the guy never even got his hands out of his pockets. You see him knocked out cold from one punch with his hands in his pockets. So it didn't look like he wanted to fight. It looked like he was maybe trying to, that was his way of saying, listen, man, I don't want any trouble. But when someone else has decided that they do want trouble, that's their opinion and that's their perspective. If you don't want trouble, you need to leave. You need to get out of there, because that guy, he was ready. They call it grooming, when you kind of fix your clothes. He stepped back. He had that whole crowd around him, which you would hope that someone would say, hey, stop, stop, stop. But sometimes that crowd mentality kind of gets you going and starts to build that adrenaline and that ego, and that you have to fight. So these are scenarios where um, the fight was in front of me, in front of them. They were able to see everything going on. So the awareness was there. They observed their baseline. They identified that there was something wrong in that baseline. And instead of escaping or having that survival mindset of, oh, you brought it, now things need to go down, they were hit. And they were hit hard enough and in the right locations to knock them out. So women and men sometimes they have a different type of threat, and the social violence that you see between men is a little bit different than the violence you see against women. But size matters. We talk about size all the time, and so does intent. So does the mindset of the attacker that going into it, they're going to win. So as the victim, you can either have the victim mindset and take your chances, or you can start to train your survival mindset and be like, I don't want anything to do with this situation. I'm getting out of here now. Or the harder part, I'm going to preemptively strike. And with preemptive strikes come an increased ability to be able to articulate that it was done in self-defense. Okay, so keep that thought process in mind. We also have so I have one that I'll put it on. It's ballsy. It just shows you what attackers will do in order to deploy their weapon of violence. And give me 1 second, guys. Technical difficulties.
Scene from a nightmare, but for 23-year-old Sarah, it was real.
I pretend that this is a bad dream.
A man followed the Colombian student along the streets of South Bank, then let himself into her apartment building. It was early Saturday morning and she'd been at a nightclub in the city.
I was walking at this time because I really feel confident.
Sarah didn't notice the man until he joined her in the lift.
And I was thinking that was so strange because I pressed my pass and I put my level and he never do anything.
He grabbed her just outside her door.
He was behind me and put his hand in my mouth and the other hand in my chest.
She feared she would be raped, but she managed to open the door and scream out to her housemate, scaring the man off.
When someone else steals your courage is the worst feeling.
She's too scared to return to the apartment.
The brazenness of him, in fact, he's followed her all the way to her apartment building and actually up to her apartment door. I think that's terrifying for her.
Police say the attack was calculated.
There were times where he had his hood down, came into lit areas, probably areas that had surveillance, and the hood went up and the head went down.
The man's described as Caucasian in his 20s with dark eyes and eyebrows. Justine Longmore, ABC News, Melbourne.
So the difference between social violence and predatory violence. you see it start to build. The pre-fight indicators are no longer that grooming, looking around. They turn into stalking, um, cap down, hood down. Um, so luckily, that girl, although she was not aware that someone was following her, she was aware of the inappropriate behavior in the elevator, and she acted quickly. She didn't just say, "Oh, you know, that's that's fine. He could be getting off on my floor." Or once he grabbed her, she was able to not only fight back in the ideas of striking and punching, but she was able to verbalize, which is important when you know there's someone there to hear your call. You have to know that someone will hear you, that cares about you, and that will do something. So you don't want to just rely on yelling out. A very good friend of mine is a 911 operator, and she says that pretty often she'll get 911 calls for noise disturbances, women yelling, noise disturbance. Could you send a police car over and tell them to be quiet? As opposed to, this woman's been yelling, there may be something wrong. Can you send a police car over to see if she's okay? So, you really have to be ready to protect you at all costs. Women sometimes get grouped into that mom demographic where like, oh, well, what would you do to protect your kids? And yeah, there's a mama bear instinct. I'll tell you, there's no ifs, ands, or doubts in my mind. If something happens to my child, the wrath of God will be unleashed. Whereas for me, it might not be that quick of a switch. So that's why training your mindset, training that survival mindset from going from I'm calm, everything's good, to, oh no, shit's gone down and I'm going home safe. That is, that's pure gold. That's a switch that not just women need to identify. And you also want to keep in mind that switch is an on off. So you're not on this high level of, I will destroy you. Come at me, bro, right? Oh, choke me. I know this one. I learned it in a Krav Maga technique class. No. You're calm, you're cool, you're collected, you're responding to things that are around you. When a boundary is crossed, or when the inappropriate behavior has escalated to a point where you feel threatened, that's when that switch flips. And it's like, yep, I've trained my mindset. I'm going home safe. I don't know what that's going to mean for you, but I know what it's going to mean for me. That's putting your confidence into action. If someone is intent on hurting you, there's no hesitation there. I have another video from, it was a woman in Florida who was waiting outside of a police station. Apparently her brother was accused of terrorism, and the officer didn't know that. He didn't know that there was a family relation. He just knew that there was a woman outside the police station looking to speak with a police officer. I'll show you that one. This is recent. So you saw the intent behind that knife attack. She was not playing around. She was ready to slash and stab her intended target. She thought about it. She had prepared. She had let it play out in her mind. Luckily, the police officer has trained, was able to react, was able to respond, and actually had backup who was there to help. That level of commitment to the attack is the level of commitment you need to survival. And that's something that you have to train. You do. You have to prepare yourself for that because if we've been attacked, it's not our plan, right? We haven't initiated that. We didn't walk out of our door that day saying, all right, I'm going to get attacked in a parking garage and I'm going to practice my survival mindset. And boy, are they going to be sorry. No, you walk out of your house that day saying, oh, I'm really excited to go into the city to see a play. And I can't wait to go meet my friends. And I just bought a new outfit and yay, you're excited. You're happy. You are a functioning member of society. And then your plans go awry due to someone else's mental disturbance. Let's put it that way. So it's not something that you can take lightly. It's not, and this is why it's so hard. Why I get a little bit upset with just do this self-defense technique and you'll be fine. 5 tips to keep every woman safe, and it's like there's so much layered learning here, and tips are great, but if you're not practicing and if you're not engaging and if you don't have a community of trusted partners to train and protect yourself, then those tips aren't worth the money or the paper that they're written on. So you have to actively train that mindset. So while we are on stay-at-home orders, take your victim selection from last week to the next level. Think of what kind of violence could happen to that victim, and then think of how you could defend that. Whether it be, go through different scenarios where you can be aware and avoid, where you could be taken by surprise and fight. What would you strike? How would you strike? Using an improvised weapon. If someone comes and grabs you and there's, a rock, would you be able to pick that rock up and use it as a force multiplier to get home safely? Okay. So this was a little bit on the heavier side today. And I hope I didn't bring you all down for your Sunday afternoon. But again, it's the switch. You can be both. You can be aware and you can protect yourself mentally. But when push comes to shove, if you need to protect yourself physically, you need to train the mindset that you'll do whatever you need to do to go home. And you need to understand that violence is very ugly. And it's nasty and it's dirty and your technique will fail. And my tactics will be different than your tactics. But at the end of the day, you need to prepare yourself for you not to fail. That's your mindset. So, check out the KMU website. There are more, there's actually a couple of videos of knife attacks. So as that violence escalates with weapons, it's just as quick. It's not slower. It's actually a little bit faster, I would say, because that fear increases so quickly when things are multiplied by a weapon. You can check out things on YouTube, and see and read the articles of the women who have protected themselves and gotten away. And it's not from a fancy technique. It was mindset. And then they were able to do what they needed to do to survive. And then be able to articulate that. That's a little bit out of my scope. But look forward to other conversations with people who are smarter than me, that we can talk through the laws of self-defense. Let's see. We had Erin pop on. Kadani, how are you? I hope all is well with you and your family. Let's see. Roberto Lee, Todd Peters, Rosemary, how are you? Lori, how are things going? Thank you for tuning in today. If you haven't seen my other conversations, they're on my my personal page and my business page. So you can look at Ann Kirk or Ann LaGrady Kirk DPT for the other episodes. This is all building towards foundation of education when it comes to protecting yourself. And it's one of the benefits of being forced out of the school and into virtual learning. We can actually have a conversation about what needs to happen before the punch. So look forward to episodes that will talk about the biomechanics of the punch. So I've been geeking out a bit and digging back into my physical therapy academic mind, and putting together a review of the literature on how to actually generate the most power you can for your punch through effective and efficient movement. I don't know if you guys remember, but I talked a little bit about self-defense tools, and I have received my mace in the mail. And I've talked to some really awesome people who are going to help me demonstrate what mace can do and what mace can't do. It should be pretty entertaining. I will be, sorry, Mom, I will be getting maced so you can see what it does to someone. And I do believe there will be tasing as well, maybe not in the same day, but it's important to me to bring you guys the most valid education I can. And there's a lot of information about what these self-defense tools can do. And I think it's only right that we also talk about what they can't do. So we'll be looking at the spiky things that you stick in your hand and how you would use them and what could go wrong. So look forward to that. And we are still planning a domestic violence roundtable. There's so many projects that are cooking right now that I'm really excited. And hopefully you guys will enjoy them. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comments. If you're watching this replay, again, leave any, feedback or ideas, different perspectives, even different videos that you've seen and that you've used to teach your students or to teach yourself about violence. Post them below. This is a resource for anyone who wants it. Good morning, Jason. I hope you're doing well. And hello, Miss Wilcox. Mrs. Wilcox, I guess. It's good to see you. Miss you guys. So that's what I got. That is episode 6 of Krav and Coffee. Train your mindset, people. Be the nurturer and the warrior. You can do both. Have a good day.